We're talking about schools, and you're going to like the new superintendent because he talks just like me. Not like you people. He talks just like me.
He's from Boston.
He's from Boston. And I've asked him to give a little of his background so we can know kind of where he came from. You know, what's his background? Because you learn a lot about the future by seeing where a person came from and what he did in the years preceding. So I'd like to first ask our school board member, Tamara, to discuss what's happening at the school board and then introduce our speaker. Tamara?
Hi, everybody. Hi. I am really excited to be here today with my LAUSD hat on to talk about what's going on in the district and to introduce you to our new superintendent, John Deasy. And really especially now, because I think LAUSD is really at the forefront of so many issues that aren't just cutting edge for LAUSD, but a lot of them are cutting edge nationwide. And especially today, because yesterday we tackled one of the most important ones, which was banning flavored milk from our cafeterias. I was kind of kidding. When I was on the way over here, I was thinking, you know, we deal with so many issues at the school district, and I was really thinking that, you know, what's the most important issue affecting the schools here in Sherman Oaks? Is it the budget? Is it safety? What is it? And really what I realized really all the way here was the issue that is affecting schools in Sherman Oaks is the same issue that's affecting schools throughout LAUSD. And that's the issue of how do we get the best teachers to stay in our classrooms and teach our kids. And a lot of you know that how this issue started. About a little over 2 years ago, when then board member Marlene Cantor and I introduced a resolution, which we didn't think was incredibly controversial. And what it was we had a group of teachers, about 30 of them, who LAUSD had already fired. And there's this bizarre administrative hearing board in the state, and they ordered us to rehire them. Not because they thought that these people were innocent or they didn't do what we thought they did, but because they promised they would never do it again. Okay? So we were ordered to rehire these people, and we did not feel comfortable with these people ever returning to a classroom with children. So we just housed them. And there were about 30 people who we were paying full salaries to, and we couldn't return them to the classroom. We had already fired them, and the state was forcing us to keep them on our payroll. So Marlene Cantor and I introduced a resolution to deal with just those about 32 people. And we couldn't get more than 2 votes on the board. But what came out of that conversation was this teacher effectiveness task force. I know Dr. Deasy's going to talk about it. And it's really, for the first time, this district is really looking at this issue holistically and comprehensively. Talking about what makes a good teacher and a good principal, how do we evaluate the good teachers and the ones who need help, what do we do with those teachers who do need help, and then what do we do with those people who should not be in the classroom with our kids. And that's a conversation that we are really in the middle of. And the reason why it's so important is because in times like this where you know, the budget's horrible, everybody knows that, we have to make cuts, including laying people off. The fact that we have people who we know are effective with our kids, who are good teachers, and we are not allowed to consider that when deciding who gets laid off, is reprehensible. And that's really what this is all about. So really with that, I mean, that is the issue issue that we are dealing with throughout this school district. It's one of the issues that we're dealing with here in the Sherman Oaks community, and that's why I think that the time is really right to be having this conversation. And the reason why I'm really excited that our new superintendent, Dr. Deasy, is here today to talk with you a little bit about that and some of the other reform issues that we're looking at the district, and then we'll be happy to answer questions that you have. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce John Deasy.
Thank you, Tamar. I appreciate that. So I'll spend about 3 minutes and just introduce myself to you, tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to tell you about the work that my administration is going to be about. So obviously from this accent, this is not an Angelino accent. This is a very solid Boston accent. And for those of you who are just dying to know, the Bruins are up 3-0, and they will probably take home the Stanley Cup tonight. So you can relax, it's going to be okay. Born in Boston, then eventually moved to Providence, and then from there to Brooklyn. And after I left high school and went to college, I spent a period of my initial work in juvenile corrections, and then taught high school, and remained teaching high school, which was absolutely the love of my life. Coached a number of sports, became a principal of several high schools, and then became a superintendent. And I was the superintendent of schools in Rhode Island. I was the superintendent of schools here in California in Santa Monica. I was the superintendent of schools in Prince George's County. If you know Washington, D.C., it's the county that surrounds most of Washington. About 140,000 youth. About 91% of the youth are Black, African diaspora. About 80% of the youth live in circumstances of poverty. And then I had the opportunity and was asked if I would lead the next round of investments for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and spend 16 months crafting those investments. And then I had the distinct privilege to come back to Los Angeles, where I am very humbled to have the opportunity to lead the nation's second largest public school system. A job I take dead seriously, and for one, I'm going to speak very directly about what this administration is going to be about. I have 3 fantastic kids of my own. They're teetering on adulthood. So I have 2 that have graduated from college, 1 that will graduate from college, underline will graduate from college at some point, and my wife's a nurse practitioner, and currently opens nurse training clinics for critical care pediatric in impacted cities around the country, and that's what she does. My own kids all grew up here, and so while we took other jobs, they stayed here, so it was really nice to be able to come back home. I came to LAUSD. I am building an administration, and we are making 3 bets about the transformation of LAUSD. We're very clear about 2 things. One thing is that we will work side by side with every employee to get better at their work. LAUSD is not where I want it to be. I would suspect where anybody wants it to be. There are stunning glimpses of amazing performance. And there are amazing educational activities, skills, talents, and work taking place. But not everywhere. And at no means for every youth. And there is also pretty stunning glimpses of an arcane bureaucracy, crazy labor rules, and an organization that is mired in not being agile and quick and responsive to schools. And we will be relentless and consistent and persistent about pursuing that. And we want to be very clear about the cost and pushback that occurs when you move in that direction. But I have no intention of doing anything but that. So we will work side by side with the people who have the right and privilege of being in front of our youth to get better at this work. I was not a great chemistry teacher when I first started. I was many years after that. And I got that way by being next to and seeing phenomenal math and science teachers. And that is the same for every teacher. And we will understand that people come to us at this level, and we will make them better. But the second part of the deal is something we will not negotiate. And we make no bones about it. And so we will not accept a differing opinion about the belief of all kids graduating college workforce ready. And that every single student of our nearly 800,000 pre-K, K-12, and young adult learners not only have the right, but can graduate from high school, college workforce ready, and achieve at a high level. And that is not about some or most or just youth of privilege. It's about every single one. And so what we say is, if you believe, and you work in LAUSD, if you believe that there are reasons why some kids can't achieve at those levels, that's great. That's your opinion. You just will not be able to work in front of our kids. And we're very clear that that part is not negotiable. The belief system that this is for and about all, not negotiable. How we get there, we will work side by side with both. And in doing that, we're making 3 bets, very big bets, about the transformation of the system. The first is about human capital. Those who get the right to be hired, those who get the right to stay, those who work in front of our students, and the entire decisions we make about who we hire, who we place, how we compensate, who we fire, who we transfer, and who we promote. The single most important decision I make or empower anybody else to make is who has the right to be in front of a child. And the critical development and support of employees and our obligation to help employees get better is part of this work. And that work around building the human capital of our leaders, of our school leaders, of our teachers, and our entire support staff is a very big bet. And for a long time, we have not done, in my opinion, a particularly good job at that. There are 3 ways you do that. And one of the ways we do that is to describe what good work looks like. And very unambiguous about that. This is good teaching. And when you do this, youth learn. And when you do this, students do not learn. And to be very clear that that is what is expected. And so we make clear what high quality teaching is, and then we evaluate people against that rubric. And then we tell people, no mystery, how you get better at that. That's a performance review system. And the one we currently use does none of that. It does not describe what good teaching is or leadership. It doesn't describe how you get better at it. And there's no consequence no matter what you're rated at. So we are working very aggressively at improving that. And we intend to do that with our union partners. Grew up in a household that is a very strong labor household. Believe strongly in that world. And we want to do this side by side with labor. But we will not just not do it. And for a long period of time, we have been in a standoff about this issue. And we're moving forward with it. And I know that makes some people uncomfortable. And I know it makes people uncomfortable to talk about the quality of people's performance. But last time I checked, this board takes money from people in the form of taxes and converts it to salary and benefits. And the expectation for that is that students do better. And I do not know another organization in the world where the fundamental outcome is that children do better at school. And it is the one thing we don't talk about when we go to evaluate the organization. So you would never conceive of doing a performance review of a hospital and say, we can talk about anything you want, just not infection rates. That is not something we can talk about. That is off the table. You would never talk about a public transportation system and say that our responsibility is to evaluate the performance of public transportation and say you can evaluate anything you want, just not crash rates. That is not possible. Well, the same kind of knowledge makes no sense to me that you would not evaluate the performance of the school or myself or anybody in there and say you can talk about anything except how students do. It makes no sense. It's not the only thing you would evaluate, by no means. Because teaching is remarkably complex. It's nuanced. It's difficult. It is rocket science to teach a young person to read. And you would use a number of multiple measures, but you wouldn't ignore actually if the student learns to read. And I know that there is in the system at the moment a stress about if we can do this. But we're going to do that because it's our obligation. And it's always our obligation to provide support to help people get better at their work. The second big bet we're going to make is in this notion of how we run the system, and we call that performance management. We set targets about how and what we should do and hold people accountable to those. And those targets are for the quality of transportation, the quality of food, the quality of how students learn, the quality of support staff, and be very clear about those pieces. And we don't make it a mystery about what's expected around that. In terms of this central office, BODRI as they call it, that it's my belief, and we will lead this system, that BODRI should be far smaller and more agile, and that the resources should be at sites. I will lead the system in what I would call an opportunity for it to look like the following. We have over 1,014 individual school campuses in LAUSD. And schools have a wide range of results. Some do unbelievably well. Now it happens that the largest cluster of those who do really well are in this area. Thank goodness for you, thank goodness for these students. Some aren't doing so well, but are getting better. And some are doing quite poorly, and are not getting better. And the way I look at this is, as schools do really well, they should see less and less of the central office. We tell you how we expect the results. You know best how to get those results. Let's get out of your way. So we trade off accountability for autonomy. Schools that are trying to get better, we should be closer to you. And say, you know what, this is exactly how you teach algebra. And as you get better at that, we should step away. And schools that consistently are not doing well, or getting worse, we would intervene. And when it is not possible for students to learn, we should close them and reopen them with faculty and staff that are able to produce those results and continue in that way. So this trade-off of autonomy for accountability is what I strongly believe in and how we will lead this work. And the last of the three big bets is going to be high-quality choice. It is my belief that students and parents, no matter where you live, have the right to high-quality choices for school. I personally, I'm agnostic about the issue of charters. I'm not agnostic about the issue of high-quality results. So whether it's partnerships, public charters, traditional public schools, I really don't care. What I care about is that who's ever leading those are working with all of our youth and are getting the same results as all of our youth. So that one is not skimming off of the top of another, but if they are truly finding ways to do that, great. And if they're not, it's the same universal set of accountability for those pieces. That is the bets that we're making, that is the work, and we are absolutely make no bones about the fact that we are hitting the ground at a very rapid pace. And yes, pace is a four-letter word, and people get uptight at how quickly we are moving. And if people are uncomfortable, then what I want to say is, then let me take you to kids who are sleeping under the tent tonight. Or let me take you to families that live in a car behind Huntington Park High School in Southgate. Now that's uncomfortable. Now take us to schools where 11% of the students are proficient, where 1% of the students are passing geometry, where 37% graduate. Now that is uncomfortable. Getting better at this work may make adults uncomfortable, but that's our obligation. We expect nothing less of students every single day, and we'll expect nothing less of ourselves around that. don't want to spend the whole evening in short lecture. I think people have questions. I'd much rather engage in those questions. If that works for you, which you said it would to do that, you should expect two things. Us, as an administration, to be unapologetic about students' rights. We won't violate the law, and where I think the law doesn't work, we are going to work to change that law, which will place myself in legal challenge with some of the status quo. Their grit and hard work, I don't judge them on their birth date. Every other decision is quality blind, and so we will actually move to change that, and that is a California law. And the second issue is believe strongly in tenure, but I think tenure needs to be improved. Tenure should be a meaningful bar, and it should be a high bar. And I believe that it should be something that is not just achieved, but celebrated. And I believe there should be a salary differential when a person joins the rank of a tenured faculty in LAUSD. That, of course, is another state law that we intend and are in the process of challenging. So, thank you for letting me spend a little bit of time with you tonight, and I'll answer your questions.
Terrific, thank you. We do have quite a few questions, and we will not get to all the questions. There's a handful of questions that are not for Dr. Deasy, that are more or less for council members, and we'll forward those over. There's a handful of questions that I cannot read your writing, so I will probably not get to those questions. And then there's some that just I'm not going to get to. So it's not that it's not the best question in the world, but if I don't ask your question, Dr. Deasy has assured us that he will stay until all hours to answer every one of your questions.
No, I can't do that because there are other obligations, but I would welcome an opportunity to come back.
Okay, terrific. And if you did, we also forward these questions over to him as well, so yes. A lot of you did put your emails and phone numbers, so hopefully he or somebody will get back with them. The first question is, and these are not my questions, they're from you guys, and so most of you did put your name, so if you do want to stand up, that way he can address you directly. The first question is from Jennifer Druce. Okay. Jennifer here? There you go. Okay.
Jennifer, the very high-powered teacher who is currently laid off.
Okay. If we can hold the applause to that, maybe we may be able to get to a few extra questions. Her question is, Tamar went to HESD as a child, and her parents then sent her to private school because of what was going on in LAUSD at the time. How are you going to stop this from happening again? HESD was a $28 million investment. Many people bought their homes in this area because of the school.
I think that, so I'm also good, I don't run this, but I'm also going to ask that we not clap, so in case someone asks a question that doesn't get applause, they don't feel bad, and so, by doing what I just said I would do, and that is that we will be, as we are right now, in front of the General Assembly, and as we are right now, in the courts. So I have 5 active lawsuits on the very issues that I suspect you just spoke about. And that we will follow the law until we change the law. And then we will advocate and fight for the right for high quality, highly effective teachers in front of every student. And that we will respectfully not support ineffective employees inside the system. The moment there are a number of handcuffs around the ability to do that. And I am not suggesting that we have unilateral rights to do anything. What I'm suggesting that the quality of performance and the quality of, and the special circumstances of the community be considered when we have to make personnel decisions. That is what I am suggesting that we do.
Folks,
I also want to just add a little bit to this question because, you know, I'm also a parent at a neighborhood elementary school. And I think the other kind of piece of this, beyond the staffing piece, which is vitally important, is also the parents at the schools in this neighborhood, the non-Title I schools that don't qualify for federal anti-poverty dollars, have to raise an enormous amount of money to do the bare minimum at our schools. in order to get a PE program, in order to get a computer lab, in order to go on field trips, in order to do anything, the parents have to pay for it. Because the way the federal money is doled out and other state rules that go along with it, there's this belief that, oh, don't worry, those rich parents will pay for it. They don't need LAUSD to pay for PE. And I think that's also something that is very unpleasant to a lot of parents. Like, why am I sending my kid to public school and there's no PE unless I pay for it? And I think that that's something that we really need to be cognizant of. One of the things that LAUSD has done, and Superintendent Cortines and I worked on this for years, and you did it in this year's budget, is an extra $85,000 for every non-Title I school. It's not a huge amount of money, but in this budget crisis, it's a really big thing. So at least the school has a little bit of flexibility to be able to spend on things. But this issue is really one that affects a lot of these schools. It's being nickel and dime for everything that you do on campus, and it really does affect morale of the teachers and the parents and the faculty at a lot of our schools.
So I just want to piggyback on a point on this particular point.
Folks, if you're going to shout out from over there, we're going to have to ask you to leave. There's other people who have questions here. Thank you.
So one of the points.
It's the same question. It's not fair. You're going to make it better. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry about the rude person in the back.
No, she's not rude.
Go ahead.
She's not rude.
Okay. The next question is from Marshall Long. How many administrators are there in LAUSD for every teacher?
There's a state formula which you can't exceed. So it's a percentage of the total population of students and the population of teachers. So you can't have one administrator above it. We're slightly under the cap. And if I don't have the math in front of me, but you can't have any more than 14% of all non-teachers to be administrators. We have about 40,000 teachers. If you do the math, 14% of that is the maximum number of administrators you're allowed in the entire system.
Okay. There was some number when...
That's a California law.
A couple of years ago, or a year ago, when we had Duffy here, he said the number was actually astonishing.
You need to have him together. I think that would be...
that would be fun. That would be great. But anyway, the number was huge compared to the way it was 30, 40 years ago when a lot of us were going to school in LAUSD, when LAUSD used to be a good school system.
I think that, so one of the differences, of course, was in that time administrators became unionized.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely. I have an interesting question. I love the idea of the decentralization and getting the resources back out to the schools.
Yep.
When that happens, what are you going to do with that huge building downtown that you guys built a handful of years ago, the LAUSD headquarters?
So my recollection is I don't think we built it, we occupied it. I personally would sell it. I actually don't think I would, if I could, because I think its value is underwater at the moment in real estate. I would sell it and move to 14th and San Pedro, which is where I would want to be, which is next to two small schools, and we should be there. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Wait, can I talk about this? We looked into this 4 years ago when I started. State law dictates that if we sell that building, we can only use it to buy another building.
Okay.
And that's state law once again.
Do they prohibit you from subleasing out some of the empty floors?
No, we are doing that actually.
Okay. Wow. Good question? No. Luis asks, and there's no last name, so I'm sorry. Compared to a person in the private sector, LA teachers work 25 fewer hours a week, 25% fewer weeks a year, retire 10 years earlier, and get twice what Social Security pays. Some double dip. The private sector worker gets about 34 cents each year for every hour worked. The teacher gets $1.80. Throwing money at teachers hasn't given our children a better education. What's plan B?
So my response to that would be, I don't know if I would say that throwing money doesn't work. I think throwing money the way we have doesn't work, which means that every single teacher is paid the same regardless of the difficulty of the assignment or the location or their performance. That has never worked in any organization. You show me a kindergarten teacher who is working with 33 students, all of whom live in circumstances of amazing impact and poverty, and they're reading by the end of kindergarten, I don't think you can pay that teacher enough, and the teacher should be making well over $100,000. If you want to be able to show me that year after year after year, a 4th grade teacher with 30 students, and none of them are reading at grade level when they leave, I would think teachers should be hired and retained. So I think it's how we use our money. Second example is we pay teachers, so at my first level is we do not pay teachers who are effective enough. Number one. Two is, for teachers, the way we pay them makes no sense whatsoever. So you get paid for having a master's degree, which you may have earned 30 years ago, has no relationship whatsoever to how you're doing your job now, but you continue to pay that. If all of that money was used to actually provide teachers for appropriate raises when they're doing a great job, makes much more sense.
Terrific, thank you. These are two similar questions. One's from Sherry Yuri and one's from Sarah Levitt. If we must wait for summer rehires, are we allowed to waive the July 1st replacement hires in the hopes of waiting to rehire our pink slip? If not, why?
It's technical for some in the room who might not understand this issue, but we can't waive the right for someone to be hired by July 1st. The issue is we want schools to be fully staffed. That's why the board supported the budget that we just did and the furlough agreement. The problem is who gets hired is not whom either the school wants or probably where the person wants to be. So you don't waive it, but during the course of the summer, when other people get hired, they get the right to go back to their school because that person wants to go back to their school. It is a set of rules for which at the moment I don't have the right to violate.
Okay. And Sarah has a follow-up question on it. How many outstanding, Sarah Levitt, are you here? Okay. So you want to address her on that? How many outstanding pink slips are there really?
There are outstanding pink slips for, in my understanding, for the last 3 years. So there are pink slips from last year, there are pink slips from this year, and from the previous year. If you sum them together, I'll be glad to give you the exact number, but my recollection is about 2,700.
Okay. And Mark Samuels asked a question. I'm not sure I understand it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why did you vote against removing chocolate strawberry milk from the school menu? Our children already eat too much refined sugar. So I'm not quite sure.
I voted against it for several reasons, not the least of which is I think that chocolate milk can be a part of a healthy diet. In and of itself, chocolate milk is not evil, and I certainly think it's more healthy than apple juice and some of the other things that we serve that have a hell of a lot of more sugar in it than chocolate milk without the protein and the vitamin D and the potassium and a lot of the other things that chocolate milk provide. We serve coffee cake, and no one's demonizing coffee cake. And to be honest, many of the leading authorities in the country on this issue, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, support flavored milk, even though it has a little bit of added sugar. And the only big voice on the other side was a TV chef that was trying to get a lot of publicity, and I don't think he should be dictating our food policy.
Okay, this next one is from David Hector. Are you here? Okay. Why are charter schools allowed to disregard special education in their budgets and then send those students back to regular LAUSD schools, resulting in even higher costs to the non-charter schools? This is similar to what happened in the voucher districts, when the voucher schools have no obligation to accept the cost of their students, thereby taking money from the district and increasing the cost per student.
They're not. And that is why in my first board meeting I gave to the Board of Education a set of guidelines that we're going to use to make charter school decisions going forward. And one of the metrics, quite clearly, sir, is the number and percent of youth who get special services, how they're staying there, and if they're leaving. And if they are not approximately the same band as neighboring schools, I will not be making a recommendation for renewal, and certainly will not be making a recommendation for startup.
Okay. This next one is from Vivian.
So, just make a comment.
Oh,
so the answer is that the answer is very simply they're not, but it's up to us to monitor that.
Okay, this next one's Vivian, right back there in the corner in the blue. Will you consider putting an end to social promotion? It doesn't benefit the students and it makes the teacher's job almost impossible. Try teaching high school chemistry to a student who has not been proficient in math or science for years.
I would say I have. As a chemistry teacher, as you just heard, it's very difficult. It's incredibly difficult. It's a very momentarily painful process to talk about because we've cut summer school, because the state won't fund summer school anymore. So the interventions we have, which were intersession and summer school, are now gone. So in reality, the tragedy is social promotion is ended because there's no diploma for the student. And if they don't pass the case, of course we know that means that they do not graduate. We have greater flexibility and much more success in the social promotion that's occurring before middle school. And that does not occur. We have limited tools at the moment at the high schools. And you obviously are a teacher and you know that we have few supports at the high school because they've been cut by the state around this issue. I would argue that the best use of new resources would be an extended year for students who are not getting it versus repeat. And so if you don't get that, you have a year-round school situation with the teacher who you already know are doing well with, and that has proven to be the most effective use at any social promotion.
Okay, this next one is from Bill Gas. Can't read it really. Gaspori. There you go. Was that close? Okay, good. What is LAUSD's policy on bullying, especially gay and lesbian students? What training do you provide to teachers and their students?
We have a very clear policy against bullying for any student, whatever the category is. For protected status categories, the board has a very clear disciplinary policy on that. We know that bullying occurs. It's actually about how we respond to the adults for identifying it and not turning a back on it. And it's about interventions for this. We do, teachers are in the room, there's extensive training about this. There are district policies around this piece. Where I would say that we can do better is the interventions. It's not just the teachers saying, okay, that's bullying, you have to stop that. We also need our PBWs, our social workers, our sites to help us when that does occur. And that has been a subject of deep funding cuts across the system. Discipline alone is not the answer. Discipline we do. It's discipline and support so it does not repeat.
And also, I hear we are piloting a program along with a couple other school districts in the country, whereas teachers and other staff can identify themselves through a sticker as a safe person for students to talk to. Yes. And that's I think a very kind of low-key way for staff and faculty and staff to identify themselves as someone that who students can come and talk to about all sorts of issues, and I think that would be that's something that we're working on too.
Just visited a high school 2 days ago, and that exact program was in place, and students were very clear about why they were in the classroom talking with the teacher. Very effective.
Okay, Joe Cornella asks, Joe's over there, what about instituting a dress code in LAUSD?
For the students or the adults?
For tomorrow. No, for the students.
Oh, okay. I think it's
I like the way you're dressed. I think teachers should look the part.
Joe, let him answer the question. Thank you.
I think we have dress guidelines for youth. I think that uniform policies is a whole process for schools that choose to go to uniform. We can do a better job about what appropriate dress is for adults and for students. You know, I suspect, like I know, that there are very clear and well-defended guidelines about freedom of speech in terms of the issue of clothing that our Supreme Court of the United States has repeatedly offered limits to how much a board can exercise their discretion around this code. LAUSD is at the edge of its limits.
Okay. Albert Friedman asked an interesting question. Albert, are you here?
I met him I know.
Okay. Perhaps you can set up a core of retired teachers that volunteer their time in the school environment to help in their areas of expertise the children in ways to motivate, stimulate, and ensure confidence to the children.
There were three things that came out from that. One is I thought it was a great suggestion, a to the core, which is for individuals who want to do that. It happens in some parts. We're not doing it district-wide. Sent a note to myself on my phone as soon as he mentioned that. As well as the thought of, we have a brilliant core of retired teachers, and for our newest teachers joining us, this mentor relationship is huge. And so we are looking into that as well. Not just the students.
Can I just add here, because there are a lot of you in this room, some of you are retired. Almost every single one of the elementary schools, certainly in my district, would jump at the chance to have you come into the class and volunteer. Reading to kids, whatever it is that you have some sort of expertise in or just an interest in, even if it's just sitting there and reading a couple stories a week, there is a desperate need for that kind of volunteer help in almost every single one of the schools. Go to your local school and ask, and call my office and ask. We will find you a school that would love to have a parent volunteer or a grandparent volunteer or just a community member who cares.
Okay, thank you. And then Ron Spiegel asks, are there any plans in the near future to reinstitute summer school?
Not only are there any plans, it's desperately needed. So what we did this year was we took the very last of the additional federal era money for summer school at a certainly reduced piece at 2 critical grades, which was 8 coming into 9th and 11 coming into 12th, so that these are the most important 2 transition points for students, because the ability of the property right for diploma rested on both of those. It's very limited. After what Tamar and I were just reading on our cell phones on the way over here, what just occurred in the state budget, that day is not coming any day soon.
With that, we'd like to thank you. Before you go, because people want to talk with you, Jules.